Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Yates of the FantasyPros Football Podcast. Thanks for joining us. As always, you can find our brand new content every week at youtube.com/fantasypros, as well as on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow while you're there. Let's dive in because today I'm taking a look at my top 10 waiver wire pickups after week 3. Number 10, Greg Ward, wide receiver, Philadelphia Eagles. Ward's been able to carve out a role for himself in this Eagles offense, and it led to some great production on Sunday. Ward saw 11 targets and reeled in 8 of them for 72 yards and a score. This offense desperately needs pass catchers, and with Dallas Goedert likely to miss some time with an ankle injury, that opens up some targets over the middle of the field. We shouldn't be expecting 11 targets every single game, but Ward is barely rostered, and you should be able to scoop him up in your league to be a fine flex play in full PPR leagues moving forward. Number 9, Eric EBRON, tight end, Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're in need of a tight end for your roster, EBRON is a fine pivot option for this upcoming week. The athletic receiving weapon was targeted 7 times last week and was able to reel in 5 of them for 52 yards and a score. If Deontay Johnson misses next week due to his potential concussion, the targets will be there for EBRON, who can be rolled out as a fine streaming option. Number 8, TRE'QUAN Smith, wide receiver, New Orleans Saints. For the second week in a row, Smith finds himself in the waiver wire discussion. While he didn't have as dominant of a performance in week 3 as he did in week 2, he's still seeing the target totals that make him a worthy stash for your roster. If you need wide receiver help and Smith's on your waiver wire, he's a great plug and play option next week against Detroit. Number 7, Rex Burkhead, running back, New England Patriots. Raise your hand if you saw the huge performance from Burkhead coming. Well, no one's raising their hand, but we should definitely talk about his involvement in this offense. Burkhead exploded for 3 touchdowns against the Raiders and was heavily involved as a receiver out of the backfield. As long as James White is still away from the team, Burkhead can be rolled out as a fine RB3 option with upside in PPR leagues. Number 6, T. Higgins, wide receiver, Cincinnati Bengals. With the news on Sunday morning that John Ross was a healthy scratch, I recommended on Twitter to stash Higgins if you had the bench space available. This worked out a whole lot better than I imagined, and Higgins was incredibly involved in the offense. He saw 9 targets and caught 5 of them for 40 yards and 2 scores. With Burrow throwing the ball a ridiculous amount every single game, there's more than enough opportunity for these receiving options. Higgins is an incredibly talented receiver, and he now has a great opportunity in front of him. He can be rolled out as a low-end wide receiver 3 option next week against Jacksonville. Number 5, ALSHON Jeffrey, wide receiver, Philadelphia Eagles. At the time of recording, we don't have any definitive news on whether or not Jeffrey will be back in the lineup for Philadelphia this next weekend. However, all indications are that he's getting closer and closer to returning. Carson Wentz desperately needs a receiving option like Jeffrey in the lineup, and he could be heavily targeted right away. This is simply just a reminder to check your waiver wire and see if Jeffrey's available to be scooped up before he returns to the active roster. Number 4, KEELAN Cole, wide receiver, Jacksonville Jaguars. Cole was one of my primary recommendations to be picked up last week, and he's still seeing enough targets to be in my top 5 yet again. While he didn't have as big of a game as people were hoping for, mainly due to Minshew struggling, Cole has an excellent opportunity in front of him again this week against Cincinnati. Even if DJ Chark returns to the lineup, Cole should see enough work to return low-end wide receiver 3 production. Number 3, Jeff Wilson Jr., running back, San Francisco 49ers. Wilson wasn't exactly efficient on the ground last week, rushing 12 times for only 15 yards, but he was able to find the end zone twice. That production is hard to ignore, and there are fantasy teams in desperate need of running back help. Wilson gets a tough matchup against Philadelphia this week, but he's still absolutely worth picking up and plugging in as a low-end RB2 option based on his scoring potential. Number 2, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, Minnesota Vikings. Jefferson was my number 3 wide receiver coming out of college in this past year's draft class over guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Reagor. He's incredibly talented, but his placement on the Vikings depth chart to begin the season made me hesitant to recommend him to anyone for fantasy purposes. However, he just had a monstrous game this past week and put that top-tier talent on display. While this Vikings offense isn't going to be the most pass-happy unit in the NFL, there needs to be someone else outside of Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook to step up. Jefferson should continue to see a safe floor of targets moving forward, and he's proven that he can make them count. Not only that, but he has an incredibly enticing string of matchups coming up with Houston, Seattle, and Atlanta. Number 1. Carlos Hyde, running back, Seattle Seahawks. At the time of recording, we have no word yet on the severity of Chris Carson's injury that he sustained in the game against the Cowboys. If Carson is forced to miss this week, Hyde becomes an instant high-end RB2 against Miami's defense that just saw James Robinson run all over them. I have to go with the information that I have available to me at the time of recording on Monday morning, and Carson's availability for Sunday's matchup is certainly in question.
Thank you for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments section below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.